All right, shalom, and welcome to our new moon, new month observance. As we have come to know that Yahweh has given us a set of rules and regulations that governs our months, our year, our keeping of these appointed feasts. Now, the things that we're going to go in to tonight on this new moon is we're going to backtrack, but we're going to deal with some other things because I had some information that was sent to me about there's a lot you're going to always hear in Israel. There's this thing about keeping the new moon according to the sliver of the moon. And it may seem like it's a new thing, but the day I came into the word, my elder was having this argument with a brother the day I entered into the word. So we're talking, at least a decade ago. I walked in day one and heard this very argument, and it was the very same way, the same things. And then a brother who I used to be pretty tight with, but we end up having this same disagreement. I mean, it's the exact. I could move one person's face out, and over 10 years ago, it was the exact same conversation. So we're actually calling this the no moon theory, and what they do. That's the title of tonight's class, because the popular thing that's going on now is no moon does not equal new moon. And what they mean by that is when you don't see the moon, then that could not possibly indicate that it is a new moon. So let's go to the graphic that shows the phases of the moon. So as we look at what happens, to understand what the sliver is, you know what the symbol for Islam looks like. It's a star and a crescent moon. That's what the symbol of Islam is. So it's just a little bit lit around the corner. When you look at this illustration, it shows where it says sunlight. This is the sun. There's always one part of the moon lit at any given time. The issue is which part of that is visible to you. So from the earth, when you look at this diagram, you have sunlight, then you have the earth there. It is lit, but if you look from the earth sitting on the lit side, it is dark to you. So the opposite side of the moon is lit. When you look, it's very interesting because the opposite of a dark moon on the other side of this diagram would then be a full moon. So I have to then ask all of my people who really push the sliver, what is the opposite of a sliver? The opposite of new is full. New is completely empty, and there is what we call alignment. That means the sun, the moon, and the earth are in complete alignment. They line up, all three, one with another. This is the same thing that causes an eclipse. The only difference is the angle changes, and then it completely blocks it, and it is a enormous phenomenon when it happens. We don't have any phenomenon whatsoever about a sliver. No matter how the moon, the earth, the angle, there is no phenomenon in dealing with that at any time. But this part of alignment that happens on new moon, when the angle changes, it then gives us an eclipse. But an eclipse and in its whole design is basically what happens every 29 and a half days. It's a new moon. So, and if you remember the last one, it was in the middle of the day and it just got dark. And it got dark, and it was the strangest dark you had seen, and it just passed. It did its little crazy thing. It was a real strange color going on, and then it started to, you know, come back light and whatnot. But when you understand this process, the moon is going to go through these same things every month. When Yahweh says he's going to start changing, there's going to be signs. When you talk about judgment, there's going to be signs in the sun and in the moon and in the heavens. So then he's going to start interrupting these things. But these things are constant. You can look in the sky. This was our real calendar. When you see a full moon, it is in the middle of the month. It is the complete opposite of alignment. So when the way to look at this diagram is you start from the sunlight, that first one where you see new, and then go up, and then it says waxing crescent. Waxing means growing. So it's waxing crescent. So you went from seeing nothing to seeing this waxing crescent. They then deal with the crescent then has got to be in the middle of new moon and the waxing crescent is how they're keeping it. So consider what that has to look like then. So you're then kind of half cocked over here, and then what would be your ending point? It's going to then come back to this same thing, but opposite of it doesn't really do anything. So you then have it's growing, so you then see that it grows on the left. So it's waxing, then you see first quarter, and then you have half of the moon lit. But if you look directly opposite of first quarter and third quarter, they look the same. The issue is it's lit on the opposite side. So when you look up and you see the moon lit on this right side, is growing on this right side, that's first quarter. When you're looking at the moon and then it's lit on the left side, then that's toward the end of the month. So you don't, when we start talking about these things of calendars, Yahweh has placed one in the sky, and sooner or later, you know, we're not going to have to, you know, how we tell time and how we do anything now is you ask people, and I do it too. If somebody say, you know, what time is it? I'll go past my watch, go to my side and pull my phone off my hip to see what time it is and what day it is. And I just passed the watch. See, so we get comfortable with the things that we get comfortable with, and then we, you know, use that. So going to this next graphic, which may give a little bit more clarity, we have the sun, then you show that same part of the moon, and the moon has its orbit going around the earth. The earth, of course, is rotating. Everything is rotating. Then you have the earth and its orbiting moon going all the way around the sun. This is what gives us our year. So the earth rotating gives us our day. The moon's orbit around the earth gives us our month, and the moon and the earth rotating all the way around the sun, or orbiting around the sun, gives us our year. So when you start dealing with the people who keep the sliver, they don't like to acknowledge anything of the sun. So they want to kind of stay everything with the moon, and they pull some things or one part out of Psalms to illustrate that. But you then have to consider, by the time of Psalms, we are way past setting up any order. Order has to be set up during Moshe's time. Moshe is the one that's giving us these moeds, these feasts, these set apart appointed feasts and things. We can't get our direction for that way down the road and say, well, you see, this says that. No. The law directs that. So by the time you get to a psalm, which understand what a psalm is, we're talking about poetry and songs. Although there's prophecy in those things in dealing with them, for you to then try and direct how we're going to operate by a psalm, we are way down the line by the time these psalms are written. Go to the next graphic, and we see what this new moon being dark looks like. And like I said, it is the opposite of a full moon. So we see that there's order in how Yahweh has things set up. Now, a lot of when you're dealing with this kind of what they call it, the no moon theory, you're gonna pick up a few things. Let's start in Genesis chapter 1. Genesis chapter 1, and we're going to read verses 14 through 18.
Verse 14. And Elohim said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And Elohim made two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night.
Right, but what people want to tell you is that the sun is just to make, the grass and the plants grow. That's all you need the sun for. When we understand what these orbits are, then we understand that the sun has more to do with our seasons than anything else. But because there's something written in a psalm that says seasons, but we're going to get to that and explain what that's dealing with, they then say, you see, the moon is directing our seasons. We know that as the earth and its orbiting moon makes its orbit around the sun, it either tilts toward the sun or away. When it starts to tilt toward it, our season changes. These are the hotter months. So it's that greater light that rules the day that decides our seasons. There's absolutely nothing that the moon is going to do that will change or affect any season that we're going to have whatsoever. It does what it does. It's going to orbit the earth. That's it. You're going to see the phases change and let you know where you are in that orbit. It doesn't have anything to do with how hot it is, how cold it is, any of those things. When you get to the orbit of dealing with the sun, now between dealing with the tilt away or toward, this affects our weather. Go ahead.
He made the stars also. And Elohim set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And Elohim saw that it was good.
All right, you got that. Let's go to Leviticus chapter 23. And let's start at verse 4.
These are the feasts of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover.
Now, in their seasons, when you look at this, you have to understand what seasons is. The Hebrew word that's used there is moed, which is properly an appointment, that is fixed time or season or festival. So when you talk, what it's talking about here, you shall proclaim them in their seasons, in their appointed time. So understand what it's dealing with. These are the feasts of Yahweh, even holy convocations, which you shall proclaim in their appointed time. All right. So Passover will always happen in the springtime. It cannot move around from season to season. Go ahead.
In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahweh's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Yahweh. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day you shall have an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein.
Okay, so now we have this set thing, but there's a lot of talk saying that you cannot, there's no way they would be able to figure out when the dark moon was coming. And the moon follows the exact same thing constantly. And I think a lot of times, you know, we kind of get accustomed to where we are and what it is we do. We have phones, we have TV, we have all of these distractions. When you have absolutely nothing go, see, some of us still remember when TV went off. See, y'all don't remember that there was actually a time when TV cut off. The kids like, no, that ain't possible. You mean you cut it off? No. TV went off. They they would sing the national anthem, and then once you heard the national anthem, you go ahead and cut the TV off. Because after that, all you got was snow. And that's something, this new generation don't get snow until they said, you know, it's either bad weather or you didn't pay the cable bill. That's the only way you get snow in this generation. They don't understand. It would be black and white dots on the television around 11:45, 12. Maybe it would go to about 1. By 12, shut down. If you wasn't finished watching, you ain't gonna watch nothing. It's gone. So we have this constant thing that we don't pay attention to anything that Yahweh has going on. But our forefathers had to do, you know, these things constantly. This was always right, you know, before them. So it's not something that they would have, you know, just missed. Let's go to Daniel chapter 2. And let's go to that, back up to the graphic before. Yeah. Daniel chapter 2, because there's this thing that says, there's no way, you know, our forefathers would have been able to tell, you know, what phase the moon was in. When you do the same things, generation after generation, and because a lot of us have never grown up outside of the city, you see the false light, you see the neon lights, you see all of these things. When you go to the country and you see what real dark is, anything in the sky, the false light is taking away from what's going on in the heavens. You don't get to pay attention to what's going on in the heavens because you got this false light here. When this false light is gone, which is, it was never there with our forefathers. So here it is, all this stuff sticks out now. So we're trying to watch it from our point of view here, saying, you can't figure this out. No, it ain't dark enough. You still got all these lights on. Cut all the lights off. When a kid get one of them glow toys, first thing they want to do, mama, turn these lights out. I need to see this thing work. It don't work when the lights on. So here it is. We got all the false light talking about what we can't do. Daniel chapter 2, and let's start this at verse 1.
And in the 2nd year of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar dreamed dreams, wherewith his spirit was troubled, and his sleep brake from him. Then the king commanded to call the magicians and the astrologers and the sorcerers and the Chaldeans for to show the king his dreams. So they came and stood before the king. And the king said unto them, I have dreamed a dream, and my spirit was troubled to know the dream. Then spake the Chaldeans to the king in Syriac, O king, live forever. Tell your servants the dream, and we will show the interpretation. The king answered and said to the Chaldeans, The thing is gone from me. If you will not make known unto me the dream with the interpretation thereof, you shall be cut in pieces, and your houses shall be made a dunghill.
Now, these were the so-called wise men of the time. Chaldean and Strong's is, did we have a graphic of that? Chaldean in Strong's is H3778, and you also have H3777. And you get to astrologer. So you have astronomers. These are, they study the sky. Then you have, of course, the astrology, which we call dealing with the little signs. You know, all of us, you know, we grew up talking about, what's your sign? I'm a Sagittarius. You know, so then they try to say what kind of person you are based on those things. Well, these people study this. So there's no TV, there's no phone. This is what they study. And people keep trying to tell us that they wouldn't have been able to do these things. All right. Here's what I present. Yahweh came and got us out of Egypt. The Egyptians were sun worshipers. They studied the sky constantly. He raised Moshe right amongst the Egyptians. To this day, they still can't figure out how exactly they put the pyramids together. They keep saying, well, they wouldn't have been able to do that in those times. Tell me how they put that pyramid together. Now, all the so-called wise people of the day still can't figure that out. But we want to say what we couldn't do. These people studied the sun. So you got the Egyptians who studied the sun. You have the Chaldeans who study the night sky and all of the things in the sky. And Yahweh has made us to deal with both of these people for enormous amounts of time. How do you think Moshe already knew what the children of Israel were doing when they were worshiping and dealing with all kind of falsehoods? He was raised in Pharaoh's house. He knew the paganism more than they did. They were mimicking the paganism. Moshe like, no, I know exactly what this is. I was in Pharaoh's house. I know more about the God than you do. So our people want to mimic, and this is exactly what's going on now. We want to mimic the ruling authority. This is why the word says, do not envy the oppressor. We see the oppressor doing something, and we want to mimic it. And that's going on big time with Israel. We really want to do those things. Now let's go back to that in the appointed time graphic, and I want you to go to I tell you what, let's go to Psalms 104 first, because I want to read this thing to you. Now, keep in mind, what we use to deal with, of course, our start of the year, we use the vernal equinox. So you have brothers really fighting. There's no way you won't find vernal equinox in the scripture anywhere. Neither do you find sliver or crescent, which they keep a new moon, a crescent moon, and they keep it by the sliver, which is basically the same thing, and you don't find any of those in the scripture. So read Psalms 104 and verse 19.
He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun knows his going down.
Right. So they say, you see that? The moon is for the seasons. Now, define the word seasons. Remember, what did we say it was? Moed, right? Okay, a moed, appointed, a set feast. All of our feasts are designated according to the moon. He doesn't mean the season of the year. That's not the season he means. But if you're not careful, they're going to take that and use that out of context. Even though they themselves will define the word seasons as moed, appointed feast, they will then use seasons to make you believe that it's talking about a particular time of year based on whether it's hot, cold, things of that nature. And then they say, see, Psalm says the moon does that. So see, we don't keep our appointed feast according to a designation of the sun. It is designated by the moon. Almost all of these days that we end up dealing with, you'll find full moons constantly. You have the new moon, then you talk about keeping Passover in the 14th day. Divide 29 by 2. You're in the middle of the month at the 14th day. How else are you going to, gather and deal with things at night? Or any of, this gives you a light by which to do those things. See, during slavery, work was over when it got dark. And the only reason because they couldn't see us. All the advantage was ours at that point. Because we could move and they couldn't see us. So there was a reason why they call it from sun up to sundown. After that, they're like, we got to get out of here because these black folk going to kill us. We got to go. If they'd have had street light, they would have worked us to death. That's the only reason it was over. So we've never seen that kind of dark. We've seen it a couple times in my neighborhood where the power went out and we walked outside. I stepped on the first step coming out of my house and I couldn't see my cars 4 steps away. I knew they were there, but I couldn't see enough. So then you take that darkness, you take that in perspective, and they start thinking about these people study the sky. It is amazing how, they tell you that these things would not have been able to be seen. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12. So now we can deal with some of these other issues here. Exodus chapter 12, and we're going to read verses 1 through 6.
And Yahweh spake unto Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you.
This shall be the first month of the year. And as we keep reading, we'll find out that it's talking about the time of year where this Passover is done. So we know that that is the beginning of the year. So, and we always define this for, what it is. But we have to also consider that we don't live in Israel. You have these people, and they'll keep telling you what we could not do in this time. They wouldn't have known this in that time, or they wouldn't have known that. What is interesting is now you have this real push because you have some people who have or they've made some connections to people in Israel. Now they want to keep the new year according to the green ear or grain in Israel. So when we talk about what wasn't possible, that wasn't possible until recently. That's why it was this conversation that was being had the day I walked in the Word. Because you got brothers who ended up, there's congregations that ended up going to Israel and people going back and forth. So now that they're relying on their new year or all of their feasts to be designated after they get information from somebody who's in Israel. So you have to ask yourself, how long was that even possible there? We're talking about the Messiah had already told us all of these things were going to get knocked down. We're talking 70 AD to 2018. So you mean to tell me that everything that happened between that time was based on this thing that we can only recently do now? There's something seriously wrong with that. Go ahead. Exodus chapter 12.
Speak you unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for an house. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb.
All right, jump to Exodus chapter 13. Started at verse 1.
And Yahweh spake unto Moshe, saying, Sanctify unto me all the firstborn whatsoever opens the womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of beast, it is mine. And Moshe said unto the people, Remember this day in which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand Yahweh brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came you out in the month of Abib. And it shall be when Yahweh shall bring you into the land of the Canaanites.
Now hold on, verse 4. This day came you out in the month Abib. When we look at Abib, the definition in Strong's H24, meaning to be tender, green, that is young ear of grain. So you'll find people that like to use, this terminology to kind of throw you off, and they call it the. Trying to think of how it's phrased, the new moon of green ear. So what they want to do is set their new year according to when the grain is set in Israel, which of course requires you to either go there or to have to discuss with somebody. Now, understand something. The very one that we read in Daniel has prophesied that this image is going to rule all over the earth. That the children of Israel are going to be spread all over the globe. How is any of that possible? Until recently. Being spread, I'm talking Israel is spread to every place. So they then say you must, you can only set your new year according to when this thing happens in Israel. So we have to really use some common sense with this word. That we keep our things in its season, but we can't go according to the green ear in a land that we don't have any connection to. So we have to consider this, because this is a long issue that has been going on in Israel, and it's not going to stop. I encountered it the day I came in, and it's still here. And even some of the literature that somebody sent me on it, I mean, it's like from the 80s that these people were doing that. Did you have something?
Even in Israel, each year, they still debating exactly when the ear is right.
Right.
And different, depending on what part of Israel you're in, they might see it. Someone else debating whether that's true or not. So
Right.
It doesn't even make a...
Well, you know, it's interesting that you bring that up, and I don't know if everybody heard that. He said even in Israel, and Elder Barak is gone, that they still debate whether or not it's the green ear is there, and they go back and forth in dealing with that. When you deal with this keeping of the sliver of the new moon, they had this thing where somebody was spotted. That person then had to come down and then report that he had spotted this sliver of the new moon. Then they have to go in front of this Sanhedrin or these elders, and then they got their own secret calculation, and then they have to decide whether or not they're going to accept the witness of this person. By that time, you probably got a sliver anyway. Because all this time is passing as all of this is going, is happening. And keep in mind, too, we have a great infiltration of the Ish way before now. So I understand that trying to influence how we dealt with things was always there. Go ahead, brother.
I'm just thinking about Saul. I was trying to find the scripture where Saul say, if it is at all possible, I must keep this.
Uh-huh.
He traveled where? Europe and Asia, right?
Yep.
But he was keeping up with the holy days back in the land.
Yep.
How was he doing that? Was he waiting for communications to come to him to let him know when the appointed time was?
He was doing something. Well, he if he left there, he would, have some kind of knowledge of how much time is going to, pass in dealing with that. And then you have to ask yourself, even the other people made their journeys there, even when there was the outpouring of the Spirit during that time, but you still have something that was there that's not there now. Remember, Christ said, it will come a time, woman, where you will not worship here or in Jerusalem. He said it won't be one stone left standing upon another. So you have that, but then you have this whole thing of people saying they want to go and keep this, and they want to do this according to what's in Israel. The very land of our captivity, of the very land that we've been kicked out of to serve in captivity somewhere else, now we want to keep it as if we're in Israel. If we could do everything in captivity that we could do free, it's not captivity. Go ahead.
I mean, for them to say that our people couldn't do that, Shlomo was the wisest man. Yeah. Shlomo had a navy. They were charting and traveling. Mm-hmm. Elder Brock, correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't it easier to chart the seas by knowing the night skies?
Moon and the stars. So, you have these things, but, a lot of times, it's not a lot written. You can easily slide over that Shlomo had a navy. Because it's not really just pushed out there. But when you get right down to it, when you talk about how they were bringing, those things to build the place, they were bringing those by ship. Some of those things were not native to the land. They were bringing those things in. So when people start talking about what wasn't possible, it is that thing to either give you some sort of low self-esteem that you're going to be, severely outnumbered if you don't deal with this the way that I'm dealing with this. And you have to be careful, because there are a lot of people that go from congregation to congregation, kind of using and supping off whatever those people have. So if they found a big congregation that can send them all over the world, they'll join that congregation and then freely travel, become whatever, they need to be for those people. This is how some people move around the world. They join these organizations and let the organization, they'll be a disciple for that organization. So then, of course, then their loyalty for that time is to that organization as long as that organization is moving them. See? So move to one state, you stay in a couple houses with people in that congregation, then all of those people are your friends. But as soon as you move out and go somewhere else, you join another congregation, and then if they'll ship you across the seas, then they're your friends. So you have to be careful about this doctrine. Sometimes there's a little loyalty that has to be paid, so that this is how this doctrine then comes and gets pushed to you. Where were you at, bro?
Exodus chapter 13 and verse 5.
All right, go ahead.
And it shall be when Yahweh shall bring you into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Hivites and the Jebusites, which he sware unto your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep this service in this month.
In this month. All right, go ahead.
7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and in the 7th day shall be a feast to Yahweh. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with you, neither shall there be leaven seen with you in all your quarters. And you shall show your son in that day, saying, This is done because of that which Yahweh did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And it shall be for a sign unto you upon your hand, and for a memorial between your eyes, that Yahweh's law may be in your mouth, for with a strong hand has Yahweh brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep his ordinance in his season from year to year.
All right, in his season from year to year. And we know that this Passover is always in this spring time. So these same things are going to continually happen. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 16. Yeah.
When we don't have to deal with this Gregorian calendar and this clock,
Mm-hmm.
you know exactly what time it is.
Well, I know the people couldn't hear that. He said he made it easy for us. Each phase of the moon is 7 days. But you have this thing where other people have infiltrated our culture, and they give us low self-esteem, especially when throwing out this language thing. They say, well, since you don't know the language, you really don't know the culture. That's a way to give you some kind of low self-esteem about the land and the birthright that belongs to you. They'll even tell you, well, if you don't speak the language, you are becoming a minority. I want you to you just pause. This is how people just get caught up in themselves. How many Hebrew mega churches have you ran into? They actually out telling you that if you don't speak Hebrew, you are about to become a minority. Understand, he says, all Israel shall be saved. Israel is scattered to the four corners of the globe. We can just go down out. All right, in my mind, I'm going to just come out of here and drive down the street. Down the street from my house is a church where they land a helicopter in the parking lot. Mega church, all Hebrews who don't know they're Hebrews. Yet they telling you you're going to be a minority. Look, those Yahweh people still in there. Those people got to be saved. What, you going to speak Hebrew to them? They don't even know they're Hebrew. So who the hell you going to speak that to? Keep going down the street, you run into another mega church packed with Hebrews. What did Yahweh say? My people assemble in the harlots' houses by troops. Those where the lost sheep are. Yahweh said, or Yahshua says, what man having 100 sheep and lose one don't leave the 99 and go and get that one. My elder was all about the lost sheep. Yahshua is all about the lost sheep. If you speak in Hebrew, you ain't lost. Creflo got about 20,000 people trapped up in there. Go in there and see how many of them speak Hebrew. But see, this is the level of intelligent dumbness that's going to come to you telling you that you about to become a minority unless you run. But see, look how the devil works. You ain't going to be able to save those people if you spending all your time working on nouns and pronouns. Here it is, these people got real issues. And here it is, you talking about the, thine. Are you serious, man? We're dealing with the effects of curses. Israel was built as a family that grew into a nation. That curse has attacked us all the way down to our family structure. We got to completely rebuild our families. Then get to a nation. And you think we're going to do that with nouns and pronouns? Trying to figure out what root words is? Trying to call Israel to see if is it green over there? Is it green? Are you serious? Deuteronomy chapter 16. Go ahead, brother. You got something?
So we need to focus time on teaching Hebrew first before we can get to salvation issues.
Right. Look, check that out. If that ain't some mess. But see, when these people give you some stuff, you got to show your allegiance. See, what did they want to teach Daniel for? So Daniel would influence other people. Bring us the best Hebrews. Let us teach them this king's language. Then we're going to use them to influence the rest of the people. But Daniel wasn't about that mess. Yeah, you can go ahead and teach me all that. See, that's the difference between being educated and indoctrinated. They will accept us in their organizations. But what they're trying to do is not educate us. They're trying to indoctrinate us so that we will deal with doctrine the way they want us to deal with doctrine. All these churches on the corner, all those people got degrees. They went to seminary schools and don't know jack. And some of them know it, but they can't and will not deal with anything outside of what they've been indoctrinated to deal with. Go ahead.
Where are we starting?
Deuteronomy chapter 16, start at verse 1.
Observe the month of Abib, and keep the Passover unto Yahweh your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahweh your El brought you forth out of Egypt by night. You shall therefore sacrifice the Passover unto Yahweh your Elohim, of the flock and the herd, in the place which Yah shall choose to place his name there. You shall eat no leavened bread with it. 7 days shall you eat unleavened bread therewith, even the bread of affliction. For you came forth out of the land of Egypt in haste, that you may remember the day when you came forth out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. And there shall be no leavened bread seen with you in all your coasts 7 days, neither shall there anything of the flesh which you sacrifice the first day at even remain all night until the morning. You may not sacrifice the Passover within any of your gates, which Yahweh your Elohim gives you.
All right, let's go to John chapter 4. And this is going to be the last thing that we're going to do tonight. Yohanan chapter 4. And let's start that at verse 19.
The woman says unto him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship. Yahshua says unto her.
Yahshua says this unto her.
Woman.
Now, you have people that are directing everything on how they're going to deal with their worship according to what's happening in Jerusalem, even though we're not there. But they still want to direct how we're going to deal with it hear from there. Go ahead.
Woman, believe me, the hour comes when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship you know not what. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Yehudis. But the hour comes, and now is when the true worshipers shall worship the Father in spirit and in truth.
In spirit and in truth. So you have this thing, like we read on the Sabbath day. During those times of captivity, you have issues where they didn't keep any holy days whatsoever. So you're talking about, does Abib mean green ear? Yes. What does the vernal equinox help us do? Keep the things in season. See, one thing we could do is know when the season changed since 70 AD without being able to go back there. You couldn't just call Israel. And who you gonna call anyway? It was desolate after they knocked it down. We gonna call a rock? Go ahead.
For the Father seeks such to worship him. Verse 24. Elohim is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in the truth.
So it's like this thing that when we deal with this new moon, this alignment, this is what we'll deal with. We have to understand that even when it talks about new moon, it doesn't tell us one way or another. A whole lot of information on that. So you have a lot of people looking into what they want to, and it's funny, you know, when people want to tell you, then they pull out these, you know, term exegesis and eisegesis and all this kind of crap to tell you that, you know, oh, you looking into, you know, these things. When we get right down to it, this is punishment that we have to go through in being separated from our holy land. This is our best opportunity of practice, so that when we get in that land, we will have some kind of understanding on what to do. But understand, Yahweh is going to be directing us at that point. While you have people out studying nouns and pronouns, it says that when they get in that wilderness, the lame man is going to jump like a hart. A hart is a deer. A deer can jump 10 feet flat-footed. So you mean to tell me Yahweh going to give you the gift to jump over a 10-foot fence, but you ain't going to be able to read? What to do to that? That's all we're going to do for tonight. Enjoy your new moon. Shalom.
Shalom.